guys, it is December 1st, which means the holidays are coming. My family and I usually make Christmas presents, so I thought I would share with you what we did and how they turned out. So this year we made candles. We've made a couple different things between ornaments and soaps and all kinds of things, but we made candles this year, and so I went out to Goodwill and an antique shop and I got 14 different containers. Originally we were going to do teacups, but they're a lot more expensive than other containers, and I think these ones turned out a lot cuter anyway, so it worked out really nicely. I spent $40 and I think I got 14 containers. We ended up making 10 candles, one of which was kind of short on wax, but that one we declared the one for our mom. So, but she's okay with it because she has the rest of the materials and she can fill it back up. Once you have all your containers and you think they're good sizes and various colors and shapes, and you think they're going to be easy to light even when the candle gets really low, then your next step is to start getting your actual candle materials. Now the first thing is to get some sort of container that you can melt the wax in. We got a glass Pyrex measuring cup. I believe it went up to like 6 cups. It was pretty large. That was our way of melting the wax and having a container to keep it all in one place. Next we got some bags. They were 2-pound bags of natural soy wax. We got all of our materials at Hobby Lobby, and these are usually about $10 a bag. Now the candles we made were pretty small, so we didn't need a lot of wax. I think we ended up using about a bag and a half of wax chips or shavings, and they were pretty small, and we made 10 candles. Next thing we got was some coloring. We ended up deciding to get red. Most of the containers were either clear or ceramic. We did have a couple that were green, but we figured since they were Christmas presents that green and red was a good way to go. The other thing we got to make it more decorative was we got a scent. We got gingerbread. I believe it was $4 for the scent, and it only took a couple squeezes in each batch, and they smell delicious. Now the way we added coloring is we had die squares. It comes with about 12 squares, and I believe we used 1 square for our first batch, which melted was at the top of our container, so we had a good amount of wax melted and ready to go. But we decided when those ones were done and starting to dry that they were a little too pink, so we added a little bit more for the next batch, and we ended up putting 2 squares in for the same amount of wax. For a set of 12 of the die squares is about $3, so it's pretty cheap overall. I think the most expensive thing so far is the wax and possibly the container that you're melting it in, depending on what you get. Now the last thing you need is the wicks. We decided to use wax ones instead of wood ones. The most important thing is to make sure that they are long enough that you're going to be able to have a little bit of extra at the top so that you can hold on to it, so that as you're pouring the hot wax in, it's not going to move around because you have the space to either clip it or hold on to it yourself as you're pouring. The first thing we did was we took the wax chips or shavings and we put them in our Pyrex measuring cup. We stuck the entire cup into a boiling pot of water. Once it was in there and started, we turned it down a little bit so it wasn't quite so dramatic as the bubbles were pushing up on the cup. But as it started to melt, we just kept mixing it. We wanted to make sure it was as smooth as possible before we went to pour anything. Once it was all melted, including the die square, which took the longest because it was so much denser than the chips and shavings that we had, once everything including the die chip was melted, we made sure it was all mixed throughout and added the scent. Again, we only needed 2 or 3 good squirts for the entire batch. And then we took it out very carefully. We set it down for a little bit to cool, just about 10-15 minutes. Because it was such a large batch, you're not going to see any difference. I'm told it's a good idea to let it cool down a little bit, especially when you're dealing with items that might not be able to handle the heat very easily. Once you've allowed it to cool, then you make sure your wicks are centered in your containers. probably best to have somebody help you, or to make sure that they're clipped nice and tight so they won't be moving around as you're pouring the wax in. But you pour the wax in very carefully, and you go as high as you want to go. Once you get there, you slowly let off, and you will almost instantly see the edges start to cool, the ones that are touching, especially if you're working with a glass container. Make sure you're very careful when you're moving it around, if at all. I would suggest doing it somewhere that you know you can leave it and not be worried. Altogether, the project was pretty easy. The most expensive thing is probably the wax, and that was mostly because we overestimated how much wax we would need, and we have a couple bags of that left, and so we're probably going to be making a lot of candles in the future. But cleanup was kind of difficult just because the wax is oily, I believe from the scent that we were adding. So I would suggest putting it on towels or paper towels or something that you can easily just toss afterwards and not have to worry about scraping off the wax and then cleaning off the oil as well. So here is one of the candles we made. We made it in these nice little sundae cups. I had 3 of these that had different colors at the bottom. I believe I got these just at Goodwill, and this one has a little bit of a piece coming off, but actually because the containers are so smooth, you can kind of feel it loose in there, and the only thing that's keeping it in there is this little bit on the edge that comes up and over. I don't know why. That is the only part that is sticking. But I would just be careful, and as long as they're upright, obviously it's not going to be falling out anyway. And then as you start melting it, it won't be a problem because the wax will be gone. This is again another sundae cup, but it's a little bit smaller. We made a couple of these as well. This is one of the ones where it had started to come out. So then I just started to put it back in very carefully and trying to find where it was sticking and try to get it to stay in place. But again, as we start melting the wax, it won't be a problem anyway. So those are the holiday presents that my family and I made this year. Let me know if you guys need any other information that maybe I missed, or if you made some candles, share them with me and let me see what you made, and have a wonderful holiday.